Hello viewers! Thank you for joining me for my final video of the year, where I give you a quick rundown of my favorite anime that I watched throughout the year, and some honorable mentions, of course. There's a full list of honorable mentions this time around. We had a really good year. I struggled a bit more to build my list for 2025, clearly, because I'm cheating right off the bat. Though they came out in the same season of the same year, the two shows that are sharing the number 3 spot aren't officially connected in any way. But ever since I saw the second one, I haven't been able to separate the two in my mind. They share some big themes and just complement each other so well. The first won our romance poll back in February. 365 Days to the Wedding brings you into the world of a travel agency in Tokyo. The story opens with the boss's announcement that they'll be opening a new branch office in Alaska next year, and they're looking for someone to relocate to run it. When this news isn't met with much enthusiasm, the company decides that they'll make the decision themselves, prioritizing the employees they view as having the weakest ties here in Japan. Namely, the ones who are young, healthy, single, and don't have children or other family who'd have to relocate with them. This sends 2 employees in particular into a panic. Takuya Ohara and Rika Honjoji are both quiet, fairly socially awkward, and as introverted as they come, but they like their quiet lives here in Japan. Knowing that they'll top the list of candidates for relocation, they impulsively hatch a plan. They manage to convince their co-workers that they've been secretly dating all this time and are planning to get married, never anticipating that these co-workers they've barely taken the time to know would be overjoyed at the news. They're quickly pulled deeper and deeper into the social circle at work and have to continuously go to greater lengths to make their fake engagement believable. I'm sure you can see where this is going. The more time these two spend playing at being in a serious relationship, the more they come to actually care for each other, raising some questions about what they really want for their futures. I've been pretty vocal in the past about how romance isn't usually my favorite genre, but I really loved this one start to finish. As someone who is also introverted, a little awkward, and very happy with my quiet, single life, I don't think I've ever come across 2 characters who were more relatable than Rika and Takuya. I definitely saw myself in the way they both were prone to overthinking absolutely everything and catastrophizing a bit. I adore that this show never tries to diminish people who are perfectly happy on their own, even though obviously its main characters move in another direction by the end. And possibly my favorite thing, I think 365 Days to the Wedding just takes the most sincere look at romance I've ever seen. This story is approached through the eyes of 2 people who've never been in a serious relationship before, as they basically speedrun through all the big milestones like first dates, meeting the family, and moving in together. They question and analyze every aspect of it, trying to define for themselves what it really means to be married to someone. And most importantly, whether getting that invested in another person is worth the complications it brings to your life and the potential heartbreak it opens you up to if things go wrong. Which brings us to its sister series. Sumasho opens with a lighthearted romance. Businessman Keisuke Nijima meets a woman at work named Takai, and the two quickly fall in love. In the blink of an eye, they're married, have a daughter, and continue on with a picture-perfect family life, until Takai dies in an accident. The story picks up a decade later, where we see that Keisuke never recovered. He hasn't lost his job or fallen physically ill or anything, but he goes through his days in a depressive fog, and their daughter Mai has grown up to be a bit of a shut-in. And then one day, a 10-year-old girl named Marika shows up on their doorstep. She announces that she's Takai's reincarnation, and she's not impressed with the state of her old family 10 years on from her death. She starts working her way back into their lives, getting her daughter out into the world, and Keisuke perks back up immediately, but she is someone else's child now, and these recovered memories of her past life prove to be unstable. so it becomes less a fairy tale miracle of having a dead loved one returned to them, and more about teaching them how to properly cope with her loss and live without her. It's some kind of crazy coincidence that these two unrelated series came out simultaneously, because they're really two sides of the same coin to me, opposite ends of a timeline in a way. They're similar in tone, mostly lighthearted, but unafraid to dive into the serious subjects when the situation calls for it. And they tackle that same big question, whether that level of commitment is worth it, one from the perspective of two people getting ready to take the plunge for the first time, and one through the eyes of two people who had it all and now have to learn how to move on. They're both fantastic little slice-of-life romances, and my stance is that even if those aren't genres you're typically a fan of, you should at least make the time for these two. My number 2 pick could not possibly be any more different. Akudama Drive takes place in a dark, dystopian future. A lot of the criminal justice system has become automated, leading to some problems I probably don't even have to explain. Our main character is an ordinary girl who gets a close-up look at the flaws in this system after she's taken into custody after a misunderstanding at a food stand. But it's a bad night to be at the Justice Building. Earlier in the day, 4 of the city's most notorious criminals were all contacted and offered a lot of money if they can break out a dangerous serial killer named Cutthroat, who's scheduled to be executed tonight. It's a really interesting and significant touch that none of the characters have real names in this anime. Rather, they have titles. They're all named for their crimes. So, in a desperate ploy to prove her worth and save her own skin when she gets caught up in the break-in, our ordinary girl becomes Swindler, claiming to be the trickiest scam artist the city's ever seen. I love Swindler. She's very much a fake-it-till-you-make-it kind of character, and it was great to watch her slowly become something close to the criminal mastermind she was claiming to be over the course of the series. Because rescuing Cutthroat isn't the end, of course. Crucial to this setting is the neighboring city of Kanto, which, post-war, has become known for being a utopia of sorts that only a select few are ever allowed into. People literally stop and pray whenever the train that travels to Kanto goes by. Our team's next mission is to break into a vault on that train, and what they find inside will raise some questions about this land they've all been raised to believe is a paradise. I love a fast-paced show full of twists and turns, and Akudama Drive has the feel of a fun heist story at first, but if you're drawn in by those first few episodes, I think you'll be hooked by the time it gets deeper and darker. At its heart, Akudama Drive is the tale of an ordinary girl with a strong sense of justice. That's put to the test as she's slowly forced to acknowledge how unjust the system she's living in is, and that injustice leads her to live her life differently. Early on, Swindler can't wrap her head around the other criminals and their mindsets, but by the end, she's found a new appreciation for them. She decides that there are things out there that are worth fighting and risking her life for. It's a powerful story. My one big criteria for these lists is that I rank them based on enjoyment over anything else. But my first honorable mention had me breaking my own rules again, just a bit. Because I have to shout out Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken. This series follows 3 girls, 2 with a passion for art and animation, 1 with a passion for making money, who come together to start an anime club at their school. The big conflict of this show is the girls trying to convince the school to give them the funding to bring their projects to life. I love a passion project, and there's no better way to describe this show. They bring you through the process of animation with so much detail, and any creative types watching are sure to relate to the battle between perfection and working on a deadline. And the more short films they work on, the more their world expands. Pretty soon they're hiring other clubs for voice acting, help with the background art, sound design, and DVD distribution at the school festivals. It really gives you a look into a miniature version of the anime industry. There was one series in particular that was fighting for this spot that, if I'm being honest, I enjoyed more, but Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken feels like one of those shows that ought to be required viewing for all anime fans. And I couldn't overlook that when I was making this list. My next honorable mention is Scrapped Princess, an older series I'm happy to have seen some love for since I posted my review, because it totally passed me by when it came out back in 2003. Well, I guess I might have been a little young for it in 2003, but it's definitely not a bad choice for an anime fan's first sci-fi fantasy adventure. Scrapped Princess follows Pacifica Casual, who was born to the royal family as the kingdom's princess. Unfortunately, a prophecy came out from the kingdom's all-powerful Holy Church of Mauser, warning the monarchs that their daughter would develop a power on her 16th birthday that would destroy the world. So the king made plans to dispose of her as an infant, but the queen intervened, sneaking her daughter away to be raised by an ordinary peasant family. Flash forward a decade and a half later, and Pacifica's fated 16th birthday is fast approaching. Word's gotten out that she survived, and basically the entire kingdom is hunting her down to execute her and supposedly save the world. Her adoptive parents have already been killed, and she's now on the run with her two adoptive siblings, Shannon, a master swordsman, and Raquel, a master magician. As the three Casual siblings travel the kingdom, fleeing one town after another in the hopes of finding somewhere remote enough to be safe, they uncover some major secrets about their world, and the people who run it, and this mysterious power that's brewing inside of Pacifica. Early on, they receive a lot of scorn for their selfishness, for valuing the life of one girl over the well-being of the rest of their world. But the more they learn, the more they start to believe that maybe the world could use some dramatic reshaping, and only one person has the power to do it. There's a lot to love about Scrapped Princess. I adore strong family stories like this, particularly ones that reinforce the message that an adopted family member is just as real as a biological one. Shannon and Raquel are both pretty reserved, but the lengths they were willing to go to for their younger sister won me over right away. I love a show that doesn't shy away from examining a moral dilemma, and Scrapped Princess has it at the forefront of the conversation right from the beginning. By all the traditional standards, our heroes could easily be viewed as your usual self-centered villains, but each twist and turn of the plot, as well as the immediate likability of the main characters, makes that a little harder to believe. The Casuals were incredibly easy to root for, even when you thought they might be in danger of destroying the world. If it came out today, I think it would probably be touched up to be a little more fast-paced and exciting, but I actually really liked the pacing too. Sometimes adventure stories should be a little slower. It gives you a better feel for the world, and I really liked the way the minor characters weaved in and out of the story, sometimes popping back up when you least expected them. My only real complaint, the big thing keeping it on the honorable mention list and off the main one, is that the big, important fights were often a little anticlimactic, but in general, Scrapped Princess is a really solid show, and I enjoyed it a lot. My final honorable mention is a show I watched very early this year, but I think I knew all the way back in January that this series would be making the list in some form or another. Goodnight World opens in a virtual reality game called Planet. The game's top 4 players are a little odd, powerful and intimidating enough that other players rarely dare to mess with them, but when they're all logged in, they tend to spend their time, quite literally, playing house, role-playing at being a picture-perfect happy family. They have just one rule amongst themselves: they never talk about their real-world lives. So the 4 members of the fictional Akabane family have no idea they're the alter egos of the real-life Arima family. Abuse and grief have eaten away at their bonds in the real world, turning them into a group of shut-ins and workaholics. Some of the most tense moments in the whole show are during the early episodes, when they accidentally run into each other and have to fumble through some actual human interaction before retreating back into the game world. I don't think I've ever come across another piece of media that was this clearly about escapism, but even this little corner of peace they've found can't last. Shortly after the story opens, Planet's administrators reveal a secret extra boss called the Blackbird, and basically put a hit out on it, promising a real-world prize to whichever player can defeat it. Most players are too excited about the possibility of the money to be suspicious, but that doesn't last long. In a classic, or perhaps cliché, sci-fi twist, the Blackbird turns out to be an attempt at AI gone wrong. It's grown too powerful for its creators, and basically become a virus in the system. Players who die to the Blackbird suffer stroke-like symptoms through their headgear in the real world. One of the Akabanes is the first to go down, which will finally reveal their true identities to each other, and prompt the Arimas to confront their real-world demons. The premise of this show grabbed me as soon as I heard about it, and still hasn't let go now that I've seen it, to be honest. It's such a fantastic idea in this era of virtual reality stories and people feeling more socially disconnected than ever. It gets off to a really strong start, too. The silence and dim lighting of the Arima house just oozes depression. It makes coming out of the energetic, colorful game world jarring in the best way. The mystery element is interesting, because the audience already knows the main secret the story hinges on, but there were some big reveals I didn't see coming, and I felt like it was such a fascinating way to approach character writing. Who each of the Arimas really are is held up in stark contrast against their game personas. As close as you can get to a character telling you outright who they'd like to be, the real story happens in the gap between the two versions of each member of this family. It has a good ending. It hit a lot of the right emotions, but it didn't have everything I wanted to see. There was one character in particular who didn't get nearly as much of a redemption as he needed, but if the ending had been just a little stronger, I think Goodnight World definitely would have pushed something off the main list. Which finally brings us to my number one pick. My favorite anime that I watched this past year was Astra Lost in Space. Astra Lost in Space takes place in the not-so-distant future, revolving around a group of 9 kids enrolled in their school's planet camp. It's the type of school camping trip designed to encourage friendship, teamwork, and character building, and some of the members of this group are gung-ho about those promises. Others are here for the extra credit needed for scholarships or to pass certain classes. A few are hoping to get worthwhile experience for the future, because the futuristic spin on this era's camping trip is that the school will take them into space and drop them off on a nearby planet for about a week. It's a pretty varied group of personalities, and there's already some tension before they even board the ship, but they can't afford to get too caught up in their bickering. Not long after they're left alone on planet Mikpa, a wormhole appears in front of them. It sucks them in and spits them out in the middle of space. Luckily, they're just close enough to an abandoned spaceship orbiting a nearby dead planet that they're able to help each other to it. It's their first big feat of teamwork, and it lays the groundwork for this group to bond and start to be real friends. And they'll need that connection, because when they get the ship up and running, they discover that they've been flung too far away to contact anyone back home. But they're able to plot a course back that just might be able to save them if they combine their various strengths and work together, and most importantly, trust each other. But there are more complications in store for that last bit. They're not very far into their journey before it's discovered that the ship's communication system was tampered with. And recently, there's a traitor in their midst. Further suspicions about the timing and placement of the wormhole lead them to believe that this whole supposed freak accident may not have been an accident after all, which leads to the biggest question. Who would target a group of seemingly ordinary school children, and why? For a 12-episode series, Astra Lost in Space really has it all. I feel like I never shut up about this, but this is my absolute favorite kind of setup for a story. When a group of very different people are brought together and forced to learn to work together to survive. This show takes it a step further by being the most explicit found family story I've ever seen. There are an abundance of tragic pasts to go around, something else I love, and the more they bond over how much most of them are struggling at home, the more they start to talk about feeling like the members of this little team are their real family. It's a great little adventure story, watching them travel from planet to planet. It's a great friendship story, watching them band together in spite of their doubts. I actually especially liked the way they handled the characters. Usually, in a story where there's a suspicion of a traitor, everyone's just a little sketchy. But the more these characters were explored, the more likable they all seemed. I loved the mystery element. Even once you think all the big questions have been answered, the twists and turns keep coming. That might sound a little strange, because in my most recent review, for Metallic Rouge, my biggest complaint was how they made a mess of their story by not knowing when to cool it with the plot twists and just work with what they had. But Astra Lost in Space did it in a way that didn't compromise their conclusion. In fact, their final episode was twice as long to make sure they had time to properly wrap everything up. The first episode is actually double length as well, giving them extra time to set everything up and introduce everyone. That sort of thing just shows a level of care for their story and the overall experience that leaves a great impression. I mentioned at the beginning that it was especially hard to make this year's top 3, in part because we watched so many good shows, but also because they were all so different, which I think was reflected in the list. I mean, how do you even begin to compare something like 365 Days to the Wedding to Akudama Drive? In a way, I think enjoyment had to be the deciding factor. To be honest, the biggest thing that pushed Astra Lost in Space over Akudama Drive was that it has a more traditional happy ending, and my tastes tend to skew in that direction. As always, I hope you found something on this list that piqued your interest, and I highly recommend anything you haven't seen. If you're new here, a lot of the anime I watch are decided by poll. They go up for the first 3 days of each month over on my community tab if you'd like to have a say in what'll be competing for next year's list. I hope you all had a great year. Thank you for watching.